No need to say who that is. The man who played the first topless role of them all, Johnny Weissmuller. Very good. How do you manage that yell now? Can we hear it?
I was trying backstage with Cassius, and I got a little of a horse from it.
Have a go. Try it.
It's a...
Very good.
This was one of the last public appearances of Johnny Weissmuller, one of the greatest sporting legends of the 20th century. The Wall Street crash, 1933. Desperate, hungry people on the streets of America. Couples dancing for hours until total exhaustion for a grand prize of a few $100s. At the same time, the new released movie of MGM Studios, Tarzan the Ape Man, provides a prophetic hero for only 10 cents a ticket. Tarzan, the mysterious master of the jungle, the man who could survive in any situation, becomes the perfect hero for the American nation in times of crisis. A new film star is rising in the Hollywood sky, Johnny Weissmuller.
Perhaps I better not think too much about that. Not a bit afraid, not a bit sorry.
How did Tarzan happen?
I made a test with about 150 other fellas, and out of that they picked me. I don't know why. Anyway, I got the job, and all I had to do was go in the back lot and say, "Can you run?" And I ran just like they do in the Olympic Games. And then I said, and then he said, "Can you climb that tree?" So of course I could climb. Any athlete could have done just as well as I could. So, "Can you pick up this girl?" And I said, "Certainly." And I picked up some girl. She says, "Run with her a little bit." And I ran. It was fun.
And you ran back to your hotel with her, did you?
We didn't see many actors running around with just a loincloth. He had a beautiful body. He moved exquisitely. He flung himself through trees and dove from high places into water, swam like a creature, and was wonderful to watch and beautiful to look at. So that you naturally, as you're growing up, and especially as you're a teenager, you want to be in that man's arms.
In 1934, Tarzan and his mate becomes another big success for MGM Studios. Johnny Weissmuller's leading lady is the flirtatious Maureen O'Sullivan. They become worldwide screen heartthrobs.
Love, mine.
Mine? Wife. My wife.
Tarzan.
Other studios tried to copy Weissmuller's Tarzan by purchasing the film rights to the books from the Ape Man's creator, Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Are you Tarzan?
But none of them could challenge Weissmuller on screen for sheer physical presence or imitate his famous jungle call. Officially, Johann Peter Weissmuller was born in 1905 in Windber, Pennsylvania, to a family of Austro-Hungarian emigrants. His grandfather had been an officer in the Imperial Austrian Army. His father Peter became a coal miner at a quarry near Windber. After a few years, the Weissmullers seek a better life in Chicago, but Peter becomes a hopeless alcoholic and walks out on his wife and two young boys, Johnny and Pete. Chicago in the 20s was in the thrall of gangsters selling illegal alcohol and involved in prostitution. These are the years known as Prohibition. Destitute, Weissmuller's mother struggles to feed her children. Johnny and his brother Pete are forced to leave school to find jobs. For Johnny, a well-built teenager, the temptation to be recruited as a small-time hoodlum lay no further than the next street corner. But by good fortune, Johnny took a job at the Illinois Athletic Club, where his extraordinary swimming talent was discovered by coach Bacharach. Their partnership proved to be the turning point in the life of the poor kid from the Chicago streets. A few years later, sports writers vote Weissmuller as one of the most promising American athletes of his day. They dub him the American Hurricane and marvel at his unique style. Weissmuller's head above the water defies all the accepted techniques of swimming.
Here's a nice guy, Johnny Weissmuller. He was making a date for a premiere that night.
In real life, Weissmuller was married to the unknown dancer Bobby Arnst. In return for a divorce, the studio bosses handed her $10,000. They were displeased that Tarzan, Hollywood's first male body sex symbol, was married.
And I'm sure this is what happened. Here's Weissmuller. They're showing him as this young, desirable, marvelous person. And if it's known he's married, then, well, he's not so desirable to girls buying tickets. In those days, the Depression was on. That kind of money would make her satisfied. She's taken care of. He'd be single. He could have his public.
During the shooting of Tarzan Escapes, the studio managed to bring together Weissmuller and the famous Mexican-born actress Lupe Velez, the former girlfriend of Gary Cooper.
Oh, that's going to be a big surprise. I'm going to be home. No! No!
The perfect couple is thus created by MGM, Tarzan and the Mexican Spitfire.
Looks like Weissmuller got his date, Lupe Velez. All right, so I'm a bad photographer. I cut off his head.
MGM, careful about Weissmuller's public image, persuade him to make his mother quit her job at a Chicago restaurant and travel to Los Angeles, along with his brother Peter, who found work as a stuntman. At the time, Lupe Velez had as a personal secretary the mother of the actress Elena Verdugo.
Oh, they were fighting all the time. They fought all the time, I understand. She says, why is it when he gets mad, he always throws something of mine? It's always my things he throws. I think she would have fought with anyone. She's tempestuous. She was very, she's just two different personalities.
And Lupe and Johnny Weissmuller looking very much engaged.
After several tumultuous years together, Lupe and Johnny split, unable to start a family.
First, I'm going to get my divorce, and then you can do what you want.
6 years later, Lupe, pregnant and deserted by a young American actor, is found drowned with her head in the toilet. In between the Tarzan productions, Weissmuller is loaned to the Billy Rose Aquacade show from Treasure Island in San Francisco, a huge water ballet where Weissmuller was the leading character together with Eleanor Holm and later Esther Williams. In the late 30s, Weissmuller is already a big star with his own yachts and a luxurious lifestyle. He's good friends with John Wayne, Errol Flynn, Humphrey Bogart and the Hearst family.
This is one of those wild Hollywood parties you're always reading about. That's Johnny Weissmuller. Wayne Morris. Wait till you see what Johnny does to that poor girl.
Tarzan finds a son. With the child actor Johnny Sheffield as boy, the film is released in 1939, turning the whole series successfully forever in the direction of a younger audience.
Sugaran Pandal.
My father told me, we're going down to see if you can be boy, son of Tarzan. From the article, do you have a Tarzan Jr. in your backyard? Which was a promotion thing in our trade magazine. And I met Johnny, and he liked me.
The script calls for Big Tarzan to swim into the scene, followed by Little Tarzan, played by Johnny Sheffield, 7 years old. This is the youngster's first movie. In this scene, the half-pint Tarzan swims away piggyback. The actors can't breathe water, so they find it's a breathtaking scene.
I remember his hair, and that this is a big guy. I remember that from the studio. My strongest impression, first impression, was at the Hollywood Athletic Club with the swimming test. I said, oh my God, I have to take a swimming test. But Johnny reassured me, and he was like, you've seen him swim in the pictures. He's like a motorboat in the water.
With the camera crew watching carefully, little Johnny fights for his life as the rushing torrents carry him toward the falls. But Big Johnny will be there to rescue him at the last moment.
My father recognized this as a unique opportunity for me to be around people like Johnny Weissmuller, Sammy Lee, other world champion with a different mindset than most people.
Weissmuller's glorious sports career starts off with incredible performances. Most significantly, he was the first man ever to swim 100 meters in less than a minute.
And the winner, Johnny Weissmuller, in a new time of 57 and 4/5 seconds for the 100 meters.
At the same time, he becomes a celebrity in Chicago when, together with his brother Peter, they save several passengers from drowning after a pleasure boat favorite capsized. Suddenly, Weissmuller is Chicago's positive hero, a city where the negative celebrity at the time was Al Capone. Preparing for the Olympic Games in 1924, Weissmuller beats all the American swimmers, including the current Olympic champion, Duke Kahanamku. In 1938, Beryl Scott, a young socialite from San Francisco, comes into Johnny Weissmuller's life. It was time for him to have his own family and a son like Boy, the character from the jungle.
My boy and Cheetah here.
Tarzan, they're gonna kill Connie. Look, Tarzan!
Soon, Johnny Weissmuller Jr. was born.
I think he always wanted to have a child of his own. That's the point. And so in Tarzan, he had one. And we sort of bonded that way, like a surrogate son.
I remember him going in the water with me and teaching me how to swim, basically, you know. So I was just a little runt, you know, I could barely walk. I guess I was around 3 then, yeah. But then he was never around that much, you know, because he was always working.
In a short time, Johnny Weissmuller becomes the father of 2 daughters, Wendy and Heidi. Together with Beryl, he buys a house in Beverly Hills, and they become best friends with Patricia Lake, the illegitimate daughter of one of America's richest men, William Hearst. After the death of Thalberg, the legendary head of MGM, Sol Lesser, the producer of RKA Studios, manages to buy the rights for a new Tarzan series from Edgar Rice Burroughs.
Out of the jungle comes Tarzan, Tarzan's son, a beautiful princess, and men whose only mission in life is death.
Tarzan Triumphs, made in 1943, is best known in cinema history for Weissmuller's famous line,
Now, Tarzan make war.
The film was commissioned by the American government from RKA Studios as a patriotic movie to motivate American troops and the nation in the war against Germany and Japan. Weissmuller makes his own contribution to defeating the enemy, participating in various shows supporting the American war effort.
Johnny! Bring some more plates!
All right, Miss Fontaine. My goodness, but it's hot in here. It's beastly hot. I'm suffocating.
That's what I say. Now I feel natural.
Oh, my, what a chest. Oh! Oh!
Using his sporting powers, Weissmuller was co-opted to teach Navy recruits how to swim beneath a flaming surface. The Navy Department gave him a special citation. Yet Weissmuller only saw combat in a reconstruction of the Normandy landings on Galveston Beach, complete with bathing beauties as troops.
A mammoth crowd jams the piers and the seawall to greet King Neptune himself, none other than Johnny Weissmuller. The gala occasion is at its height, when the surging crowds overflow the pier in a
The marriage to Beryl is going wrong, and the couple break up when his daughter Wendy is 3 years old.
It was only what my mother said. I mean, every day she would take things out of his pockets, pieces of paper with names and numbers on them that women would jam into his pockets. Yeah. I imagine because of the way he was, a happy-go-lucky party boy and all this business, he just had very low, well, he probably got into trouble a lot.
This is the beginning of Johnny's long and painful fight for the kids and his money.
They argued. They screamed at each other. I remember this because I was probably frightened. He roared across that patio, got to the door, turned around, put his hand up in the air, screamed something. My mother screamed something, and he went out that door and slammed it. And that's the last time I saw him.
A major problem is Beryl's rejection of the divorce settlement in order to squeeze as much money from Johnny as possible, using the 3 children, Johnny, Wendy, and Heidi, against him.
He used to say, I'll see you, I'll see you around. And Mom used to dress us up, but your daddy's going to come by today. And I'd sit outside on the stairs and wait for like 5 hours, and they never showed. And I thought to myself, well, I guess he doesn't like us. Something, strange like that. I didn't realize until a lot later that my mom had a writ thing. He has to stay a mile away. That was part of the divorce procedures. Of course, they were separated then, but he couldn't even come near the house. I'd ask her, where's Daddy? And she'd say, well, he's not here. I guess he doesn't like you. She was driving wedges. She was using us as a wedge. And she was after some money, I guess. And she got it.
Now, are you going to tell us how to get to the City of Diamonds?
My uncle had told my mother, the first thing you do is you have children, lots of them, lots of children. Then you buy the biggest house that you can get. And you stuff it full of the best furniture that you can get. Get the biggest cars that you can get. Do everything on a huge scale. So when you divorce, you can stick him for the world.
Consequently, Johnny decides not to have any more children and undergoes a vasectomy operation. By then, Johnny was virtually broke. The costly divorce from Beryl had ruined him. To qualify for the 1924 Olympic team, Weissmuller had to produce an American birth certificate. Together with his mother, Johnny sat down and forged his name on his brother Peter's document. He became his younger brother Peter John, born in Windber, Pennsylvania, not, as was the truth, in Timișoara, Romania. From that moment, the way was open to the games in France and eternal glory.
Johnny Weissmuller, the screen's Tarzan, stops to say hello. How are you, Johnny? What's new? What's new? I'll show you, says Johnny. A tricky little gadget for carrying extra golf balls on the back of your belt. Weissmuller thinks it's quite a joke as well as being practical.
After many relationships with several women, Johnny married the young golfer Aline Gates, 22 years his junior, the daughter of a golfing friend.
It was probably at the time that I would always try to sit next to him after the golf game and all. And he pat me on the head and he said, "Why don't you go up, someday when you grow up, I'm going to marry you." And I thought, how silly, he's married and he's got babies, you know. But it happened.
Johnny Weissmuller, somewhat overdressed without his Tarzan togs, followed by Mrs. Tarzan.
Probably started dating him when I was about 18 or 19, against my father's will. He didn't like the idea that he was older. He didn't like the idea of his divorces, and he just thought it was not the right thing for me. But it had to happen.
In 1948 in Acapulco, Mexico, the production started of the final movie Johnny Weissmuller ever made as Tarzan, this time without Johnny Sheffield as boy. The new picture, Tarzan and the Mermaids, turns out to be nothing more than a cheap musical parody of the earlier films. One of the mermaids was performed by a young starlet closely connected to the Mexican leader. She was Linda Christian, the future wife of the Hollywood actor Tyrone Power, and whose daughter is the Italian singer Romina Power.
I was on the contract to Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer at the time, and because the president of Mexico was interested in my career, I was called to the main office, L.B. Mayer, and the different directors and producers, and they said, "What do you want to do? What film, with whom?" Robert Taylor, Van Johnson, all the leading stars. I said, "I'd like to go to Acapulco and do a Tarzan." And that's how it started.
Won't you tell us who you are?
I am Mara.
What do you fear?
I ran away from Baloo.
Tarzan can't help Mara.
If you help me, you'll be in danger too.
I think he was getting tired. I don't know how much he did afterwards, because strangely enough, I never saw him again. Well, I think mostly because everything is visual with filming, it was because he had become a little heavier. And maybe he'd lost the enthusiasm too.
You know, he had the most gorgeous body. I mean, the most gorgeous body that a man could have. And when he would abuse it, gain the weight and everything, I said, "Johnny, why do you do that to yourself? You've got this gorgeous body, and you're just, you know, the skin can only have so much elasticity." And, but it was difficult because he had so much time in between pictures.
If my people knew anyone posed as Baloo, they would destroy him.
If people know Baloo a man, they destroy you.
It is the will of Baloo that they be hurled into the sea.
And at that time, there was some talk about replacing Johnny Weissmuller, that it was time to have a younger Tarzan and start the cycle perhaps again, maybe with another boy in another era. I don't know any of that. I was asked to make a test. Perhaps I would be a natural progression for boy to become Tarzan. And then they might have Tarzan die, or, who knows what. I was not very excited about it at all. When my time is finished, I do something else. I don't replace Johnny Weissmuller.
After 9 months of exhausting work shooting, Tarzan and the Mermaids is over. Johnny is old and not in very good shape anymore. The producer, Saul Lesser, replaces him in the next Tarzan movie with a much younger Lex Barker.
Promptly, the agent made a deal with Columbia Pictures to make Jungle Jim. And those stories were the same as Tarzan, except Jungle Jim didn't swing on a rope or a vine, but he was friendly with the animals. He did not like people coming into the jungle, disturbing the animals and the people or hurting anything, plants. And he was Weissmuller.
Happy to wear some clothes and speak something in front of the camera, Johnny Weissmuller takes on the lead character in the Jungle Jim series, produced by Columbia Pictures between 1948 and 55. But his portrayal of Jungle Jim was always overshadowed by his performance as Tarzan.
I don't think my father was an actor at all. He was an athlete first and foremost. He found it profitable, maybe, to get into acting. Somebody talked him into it, because I don't think he even thought of it until somebody said, let's go and make a movie with you.
It sounds strange, but he had an inferiority complex. And he says, it's difficult for me to get on the stage. He says, once I'm there, I'm all right, but to start. And he says, all my life, he says, I've been too big. My hands were too big, my feet were too big, and I just felt like I didn't know what to do with them.
After Jungle Jim, because he's typecast as Tarzan, Weissmuller gets no further offers. He soon discovers that he's not even considered an actor by the film industry, even though he's already a legend.
That is not uncommon. And it doesn't mean that you're not good at your work, and it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means for some reason you are too recognizable by the public, and they'll be in a scene and they'll say, oh, there's Tarzan. You know, when you're in a Western, and they have that fear that it'll take the concentration away from the scene, that he'll be recognized as another character.
Even to Zam.
Zam? The hidden city beyond the mountains?
Zam is no longer a secret.
He was typed, meaning that if he got too far out of the jungle, they weren't about to make a Cary Grant out of him. He was never that great of an actor, you know. He wasn't an actor, he was a star.
Despite his problems, Weissmuller is still extremely popular and remains optimistic.
Johnny Weissmuller goes off the diving board into the water with a big splash. Johnny's a good sport and very popular with the crowd, which prompts him on with applause and cheers. He dives again and again, and then swims back in his carefree manner.
But this is also the period when he's allowed to see his children again.
He left when I was about 3. And he didn't come back until my brother's appendicitis. When my brother was 12, so that was 7 years later, he came back and peeked in my brother's window. And my sister, who was a year younger, did not even know him and told me that there was a man peeking in my brother's window. And I went and looked and I said, that's your father.
There's a touching reunion between himself and Junior.
I didn't know what it was. I knew I was sick. And everybody seemed to think I wasn't going to make it. So they almost done everything but call in the priest. So the old man had heard about it, and he and Aline came to the hospital. And I said, well, hello, Dad.
Weissmuller received in 1950 the title of the best swimmer of the half-century. 2 years later, he and his wife, Aline, are the guests of honor at the Windber Town Council, where he was officially born. Not one word was mentioned about his real birthplace in Romania.
I just always heard that it was Windber, Pennsylvania. I think that he felt like I felt that when I found out about it, that the young people, his fans that idolized him, that they would think of him as being a liar or not being an up-and-up great champion. And that's possibly the way he felt too. Or they might take his medals.
In 1924, Johnny Weissmuller becomes the revelation of the Olympic Games in Paris. 3 gold medals and a special distinction from the President of the French Republic. At home, he becomes a national hero. In reality, at the time, he doesn't have American citizenship. Are those medals for the USA, or do they belong to Austria, Hungary, or Romania?
Well, I get mail right now. It comes from Romania. The picture is showing in Romania. So it says J. Weissmuller, Tarzan, USA. Anyway, they all write the same thing, and they said, they love you, so we love you too. Something like that. Please send me a picture.
Johnny Weissmuller Jr. visits Timișoara, Romania, the place where Johnny Weissmuller was born 100 years ago. At only 8 months old, his family leaves for America.
Hello. Welcome, son of the Tarzan. Welcome.
It's good to be here.
How do you do?
Good. It's nice.
Sorry, it's raining.
Lots of water.
Cats and dogs.
I know all about water.
What are you anxious to see here?
I'd like to see the place where he was born and grew up in. And I'd like to see a lot of the town and, kind of get into my head what he was feeling when he was, but your age, no, well, younger.
It's not the house.
The place is sure.
The place. It's not the house. And not even the place. Let's be fair and say it the truth. I'm sorry, they just missed the house, John Scott.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
The house, it's 2 houses from here, and it was demolished in the late 80s because nobody knew the family. Peter Weissmuller
Ready? Go! I asked him once, I said, why didn't you just tell everybody I've been an American citizen since 32? And he said, then I couldn't cover my ass in 24 and 28. So he had to play that game. And if you take a very close look at some of the pictures in Windber, he's got this sheepish grin on his face, like, like I really shouldn't be here. But he lived with that life for a long time.
A car crash on the Carmel Pacific coast is the beginning of the end for his 15 years of happy marriage to Aline Gates.
I look like I had been cut like with a cleaver or something from here through here. And this was torn away, and it was torn away up here. It was a wonder that my eyes were all right. He actually didn't want to be seen with me the way I looked. And yet, he said he didn't want me to have plastic surgery because he says, you've healed now and you're okay. But my mother, she says, Aline, you can't go through life like that. So she talked me into seeing the plastic surgeon and having the work done. And every time I had an operation or surgery done, he didn't like it. So that separated us a little bit. I was told that I married him for his money and he was $40,000 in debt. And that's why we had to go on the road with the shows, the water shows, to try to get out of debt and to pay the child support and the alimony. And we're always working, trying to keep our head above water. Bit by bit, we went downhill again.
Johnny Weissmuller's battle with alcoholism, his lack of self-confidence, increasingly damaged the relationship with his fourth wife, Aline.
When he wasn't drinking, when he was sober, he was the kindest, most loving person that you'd ever want to meet. And I would think, well, and then I would threaten him to leave him, and I'd go back to my mother and my father, and he'd beg me to come back, and he'd be all right for a few weeks, and then he'd start with the drinking again. What happened is Johnny the money wasn't coming in anymore, and he wasn't working. We started borrowing from Burus. So of course, it was all based on our house. And I said, Johnny, I'm not going to sign anymore. We're going to lose this house. And he says, you have to sign it. He said, we have to have the money. I did not leave him because of the money. I did not leave him. In fact, I swore I would never leave him, no matter what.
Finally, Aline was forced to leave. It was not until the divorce proceedings that Johnny discovered that all the properties he had mortgaged to raise money to live off had fallen into the hands of Burus, his manager and financial advisor since the 30s. Johnny was broke again.
It's an average Sunday afternoon, and you've just decided to take the car to a car wash. You own Buick's new Opel Kadett.
In the mid-60s, Weissmuller tries to make money with some business partners, mostly small-time crooks trying to take advantage of the Weissmuller name and reputation.
Instrument panel is easy to read. Seat belts are the new gen.
Any ambitions have you got left professionally, Johnny?
Well, we're doing a Jungle Hut, one of those food franchise restaurants right now, and we're going to go in real good. And the main thing about a franchise thing is I think to give the people good food, and that's what we're going to do.
I never heard him bitch about losing anything. He only talked up. He only talked about what he'd done and what he might be going to do.
Maria Baumann, the widow of a German officer from the Second World War, enters his life. To escape the clutches of the American Internal Revenue Service chasing him for taxes, Johnny goes on a European tour. He freely trades on his popularity and charm, and television companies line up to pay him for celebrity interviews. But what he earns fails to settle his debts back home. While on tour, Weissmuller and his fifth wife become famous again.
Johnny Weissmullers Biografie, Johnny Weissmullers Biografie steht drauf. Vielleicht finden wir noch einen guten Übersetzer. Ups!
Da geht die Rücke weg. Ist okay.
Das ist ja heute. Das macht gar nichts. Das macht gar nichts. Ich glaube, das macht gar nichts. Sie sind ohne diesen Schmuck.
Aber wenn man so viel verreist, dann muss man schon eine Perücke tragen.
Das meine ich auch. Und ich finde, Sie brauchen sich dessen überhaupt nicht zu genieren.
Mine's all right.
Sein Haupt ist all right, sagt er.
One time we all went to lunch in Beverly Hills, and there he was. He came in with his wife at the time, And I was with my mother, and my father's ex-wife was in there. Aline Gates was in there.
I was met at the door by the owner, Steve Crane. And he said, Aline, I don't think you want to come in today. And I said, why not? And he said, because Johnny's here with Beryl, his ex-wife, and his future wife, and a couple of the kids. So he says, that makes three of you in here. And I said, that's all right.
It was like one big happy family. It was funny. Here he was with all his ex-wives and his children, and it was one big happy family in a restaurant in Beverly Hills.
How about your relationship with Cheetah? Were you just good friends?
Cheetah. Yeah, we were very good friends. In fact, my lawyer said if I married Cheetah, I'd have been $2 million ahead.
Heidi, his youngest daughter, perishes in a car accident when she's 4 months pregnant.
I think he was pretty shocked by it all. Because I don't believe that he had anything heavy like that hit him. I think, and because maybe the guilt from not being able to get to know her, you know, I think that got to him.
In 1972, Johnny Weissmuller, unable to get work, takes a job as a greeter alongside world heavyweight boxing champion Joe Louis at Caesars Palace Casino in Las Vegas.
It wasn't his kind of work, you know, stand and shake hands with a whole lot of people and have them take your picture. And I don't think Joe Louis cared much, you know. He was kind of gaga then anyway. So, you know, they just told him what to do and march him around. And I think that's what the old man sort of felt like, you know, just wait for the phone call and then come down and go to the front door and stand there and smile and shake hands. I don't think he liked the job, but it paid the bills.
It's sort of like a has-been job. And you have to tolerate what people say to you or what they demand of you. I think it had to be very difficult for them.
Hollywood had not been all that nice to him, as it isn't to a lot of people. He came over to my table and he said, "Hello, Elena. You remember me?" And I said, "Oh, of course I remember you, you know." And I introduced him to the table, and I thought, how strange that he would come and say hello to me with my group. He looked a little worn, a little tired. He wasn't the big, gorgeous Johnny Weissmuller that I had known as a little girl, you know, or even a young woman.
After a stroke in Caesars Palace in 1973, the worst period of his life begins. The one-time Tarzan actor starts to degenerate into a shadow of his former self. The newspapers are full of reports of Weissmuller's strange behavior and antics. He ends up in the care of the Motion Picture and Television Home for Actors.
Oh, he was terrible there. He was like a teenager. He was giving the ape calls and getting in all kinds of trouble. And I think he got thrown out. So then they took him down to Acapulco. But at that point, he was very ill.
Ironically, Johnny and his wife Marie end up in the Los Flamingos Hotel, once owned by Weissmuller himself in the 50s, along with John Wayne, Red Skelton, and even his ex-manager, Boo Roos. Mexico is the only place cheap enough to eke out the $1,200 a month the couple receives from a benevolent fund. In exchange for accommodation, he becomes a tourist attraction. Even today, the hotel exploits the Weissmuller legend.
Over there is the Tarzan house. You can see the round house where Johnny Weissmuller, he lived there for a long time ago. When he filmed the movies of Acapulco, when he decided to leave, to die, and to be buried here in Acapulco. Johnny Weissmuller, Tarzan.
Tarzan Jungle right here. Yeah, come in. Tarzan Jungle, go ahead. Cheetah monkey face on the plant over there.
This place, they built all the movie stars like Tarzan, Johnny Weissmuller, Frank Sinatra, John Wayne, because when they came here, they found this place was almost the paradise. And when they were tired to working in Hollywood, they come here to hiding from many months or a week or long time. This is the place where they stay for longer.
Here, sit on John Wayne's, or sit on Tarzan's bed. Is it okay?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'll give you the leg, yeah.
Diane and I went down there, we saw him, and he pulled me aside, and he said, John, you got to get me out of here. I want to go home and see my pals. I said, Pop, they're all gone. And he, what? I said, yeah, all your pals. And they were all gone, you know, and he just couldn't believe it. He couldn't understand it.
Later in 1983, he's taken to hospital for a tracheotomy resulting from respiratory problems. He's diagnosed with a chronic brain deterioration syndrome. He's too ill to attend the induction ceremony of the Olympic Hall of Fame.
And here's a guy who weighed about 130 pounds. He was in a set of diapers. He had a hole in his throat so he could breathe, trachea, and a hole in his stomach so they could feed him. And he couldn't talk. All he could do was look at me and he'd start to cry. Man, it was a tough time then.
Well, it's been marvelous talking with you. Wish you all the success in the world with that. Great to get together. Will you say farewell to us with that yell you took?
Weissmuller goes to the Olympic Games in Holland in 1928 and wins 2 gold medals. In his career, he set an incredible 67 world records. Johnny Weissmuller was undefeated in official competition. In 1929, the year of the Wall Street crash, he's earning $500 a month presenting BVD swimming costumes. At the same time, MGM are looking for someone to take the role of the mysterious master of the jungle who could survive any situation. Tarzan, the ape man. On the 20th of January 1984, Johnny Weissmuller dies in Acapulco at the age of 80. 36 years after the making of Tarzan and the Mermaids, the actress Linda Christian, who'd been in the movie, was the only representative from Hollywood at his graveside.
It happened to be in a place outside Acapulco. They had just started this graveyard. And on arrival, I realized that there were only the local people there and nobody from Hollywood. I didn't see anybody. And there were very few people too. Only 2 or 3 tombstones. They were just starting. During the so-called ceremony, when they were lowering his casket, his famous yell was very loudly broadcasted, which chilled me to the bones because it was eerie to think that this vibrant man was now being lowered in his grave. I found it very sad for a man who was internationally known and admired, that his end would be so triste, you know, so sad. I can still see it all can visualize it. But that was all. That was the end of this glorious figure from the screen.
And now Johnny Weissmuller will try to break his own world record for the 100-yard dash.
In 1936, at the height of his fame as a Hollywood star, Johnny Weissmuller tries to break his own freestyle record. He failed by less than 1 second. Weissmuller's career as one of the most significant sportsmen of the 20th century is over.
Hello, folks. Tried to break my record, but I missed it a little over a second. And I don't know, I might be able to break it if I took a few months off, started some serious training. But right now, I'm just